Welcome, audience. Behind the scenes of the Run With It podcast, we've got Tyler King here. He's the founder and CEO of Less Annoying CRM. He also hosts the podcast Startup to Last. We're going to be talking about an idea to improve the meeting experience for folks, improve organizational productivity overall. Looking forward to kicking around with you. This is the unedited version of the podcast that includes a video stream. You're seeing it live here. The edited, polished version will probably come out on Friday. If you would like to hear that, subscribe to us. You search for Run With It on your podcast player of choice. You'll be able to find it. Love any feedback that you have. Email us. What's that?
No bleeps, no blurred out body parts on this one.
Oh yeah, you try to get us on the R-rated list for the explicit content on Apple Podcasts last time. Yeah, blacklist us on Facebook.
Sorry to interrupt your flow there.
No, that was you good. Yeah, if you guys are ready, we can get started here. I will have to. I'm glad for that interruption actually, because I was not recording on Zencastr. I probably would have remembered, but here we go.
Awesome. Are you recording on Zoom?
I am recording on Zoom. Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay. Welcome to Run With It, the show that brings you untapped business ideas from successful entrepreneurs. My name is Chris Justin, and I'm here with Ethan Janney. Ethan, how are you doing today?
Wim Hof. Are you aware of Wim Hof?
I am aware of Wim Hof. I think that we recently got into Wim Hof breathing around the same time. I just took a cold shower before doing this call, which is pretty rough in Pittsburgh.
I've done a few cold showers recently, and I've been doing Wim Hof breathing every morning around 9:30 a.m. my time for a couple of weeks now. It's pretty cool.
That is a good way to get your energy going before meetings that you have, which is going to be the subject of our conversation here today with Tyler.
Sort of.
Yeah. Kind of. Yeah.
I mean, notes, meetings, whatever. Okay.
Meeting notes. Yeah. Tyler King is the CEO, founder of Less Annoying CRM. He is also the host of the Startup to Last podcast. And he is bringing us this idea to help facilitate meeting notes. So Tyler, tell us about how you came up with this idea.
I basically think that generally speaking, there's a huge lack of tooling around meetings. It's an interesting space to me because everybody has meetings. Almost all the meetings are the same. Like go to big companies, small companies, anywhere around the world, people go in a room and talk and then leave. It's pretty similar. But there are very few tools. There are a lot of tools leading up to it. How do you schedule the meeting and this and that? But when you're actually in the meeting, there's not a lot of tools to make the meeting go well. So just in general, I think that's a good space. But so I was toying around with like, what would be kind of a micro SaaS in that space? Like just a really quick, you could build it in a weekend type of idea. And what occurred to me is taking meeting notes is I believe a pretty unsolved problem. And if you basically just got an email right before the meeting started and replied to the email and typed all your notes into it as the meeting was happening and then hit send at the end, I thought that might be kind of the most lightweight possible way to get meeting notes logged, which a lot of people need to log meeting notes for various reasons, maybe to share them with the team, maybe for compliance reasons. But I think a lot of us can probably relate to like, you get to the end of the meeting and it didn't happen. So I just thought if you just get a reminder, reply to that reminder email with your notes, it's not revolutionary, but I think it's a nice little utility that could help a lot of people.
I'm going to actually pause this real quick. I am hearing a little bit of a crackle from Tyler's mic. Were you hearing it from his?
I did not. I didn't hear it from him.
You didn't hear it. You're not hearing it now. You were hearing it before, but not now. Okay, we can just keep recording, I guess.
Okay. I think I can jump in here with it being a good segue. I think that we need to do a little bit of selling on the idea of meeting notes as a whole. We probably have a lot of developers, engineers. I'm a former chemical engineer who kind of snubs their nose at the idea of having to take meeting notes. That's that's below your value of time.
Chris doesn't even want to have a meeting in the first place.
I'm trying to just axe all my meetings. I mean, I think a lot of people are in that
software.
Yeah, you just mind meld and avoid the need for meetings overall. But I've really come around to the idea that taking good meeting notes is And action steps is a really powerful way to direct a company, to exert influence on the way an organization works. And it's really simple to do. And it's not just, you're not just doing it for someone else. It's incredibly clarifying. It gives you a lot of time back. So there are a lot of productivity books out there that can talk more about this. But I do think that it's important to state up front that if you're not trying this, if you're not doing this, try it out. If you haven't been sold on the idea, you have to start trying it out before we start getting into the actual how we would do this. So
when you say try it out, what do you mean? What would be a way to try it out?
So one thing that someone can do to try it out, I've been at 5 minutes before the end of a meeting, you stop the conversation, you try and wrap it up, and then you say, who will do what by when? So something like that. That's a super easy way to get everyone on board and translate the actual discussion that you've had into action steps. So even if you
I've also found
try different ways of organizing your meeting and coming away with takeaways and text-based takeaways too, especially.
Yeah, it's the same idea as taking notes if you're like a student in a class. Even if you never reference the notes later, there's some value to, I think it helps with your memory. It helps with your engagement. You don't just sit there and zone out. If you're taking notes, it kind of forces you to be present.
It reminds me of, there's this piece of advice to people who, when they go into college, that's passed around. It's probably apocryphal at this point for some productivity guru, but the best thing that you can do for your productivity, for your college career, after you attend a lecture, take 1 minute and write down your notes from memory. And just doing that behavior in itself is worth probably half an hour, 30 times the amount of studying that you could do after the fact if you attempted it the next day. So yeah, we can talk a lot about that in general productivity, but let's get into the nuts and bolts of how this would work. You mentioned making it super lightweight. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think first of all, if I can just start with like a challenge that entrepreneurs face right now, is there's almost too much software in the world and it's all fighting for the user's attention. And I think a real challenge for new entrepreneurs, if you're in the software space, is, am I really going to get my customer to open another tab and leave it open and use it all day, every day? You're not just adding value, you're fighting for the user's attention. And so I'm really fascinated by the idea of building software that lives inside a different piece of software that the customer is already using. So when I say this is really lightweight, I mean, you don't really have to build a user interface. You just send an email to the person. The email already has a good WYSIWYG editor. You can attach files. It's got a lot of the infrastructure already built, whether you're using Gmail or Outlook or whatever. You just send them an email, they send you a response back, and you process that response. So when I say it's lightweight, I mean, I think there's like ideas for building this out into a much bigger product eventually, but the first MVP of it, I feel like it could be built with just a pretty simple backend thing that integrates with, I don't know, Mailgun or some kind of API to handle the email.
I want to lay some smack down here right up front. And I just want to say, okay, Tyler, you've got an incredible company with Less Annoying CRM, incredible name. I love that it's kind of fun, but you've still managed to make millions of dollars a year with this app. It's pretty incredible. Isn't this like the common developer mistake to make some sort of to-do list note-taking app? Isn't that just like 101, programmer mistake, make a note-taking to-do list app? What do you say to that?
That's a fair point. I think, why is that a mistake? And I think the answer is, what developers always do is they scratch their own itch. They're making a to-do list app for developers. And it's not that that's a bad business. It's that we've all done, there's just too much of it. I'm taking this from the approach of Less Annoying CRM serves very small businesses. And I'm not talking about startups. I'm talking about like insurance agents and stuff like that. The types of people that probably a lot of the listeners of this podcast don't think of as a business, right? It's too boring almost. We sell to the boring businesses. This is an idea that I think appeals to boring businesses. So yes, it is in a somewhat competitive space, like you're saying, but I think there's a lot of opportunity building these tools that are kind of oversaturated, but building them for not tech startup people.
Wonder if there's a way to make this without even coding. I'm picturing a Zapier integration, and I don't know what the maximum plan is on Zapier, if that would allow you to send all the emails that you would need to send, but you could at least test an MVP with something like that, and use just friends and family, which is one of the recommendations you had, and get some feedback before you actually hire a developer or build it yourself.
Yeah, I'm not a no code expert, although I'd say I'm like intermediate level no coder, and definitely most of the components of this I think would be pretty straightforward to do. If you could build the whole thing, that'd be a great, like, I think that'd be pushing the boundaries of what no code could do, but possibly within the boundaries. Yeah.
The key thing to me is to reduce the friction of it, and because you're trying to change people's habits, and whenever you're trying to do that, of course, people are pressed for time, and they're maybe stressed out about having to present to management or whatever it is. It's really hard to try something different. And the difference between just a little bit of friction and no friction, it makes all the difference in the success of an app. So to me, it's much more important to figure out that aspect of it than the actual back end technical piece, because all of that can be solved.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. The nice thing is, I mean, if you get the email, there's not a lot of opportunity for friction here, I don't think. You get an email and you reply to it. Like, I feel like probably everyone can visualize the product here.
Well, you get the email, you start feeling bad about it. You're like, gosh, damn it. I need to take notes. I didn't prepare an agenda. I didn't send out what we're trying to accomplish. And you just feel guilty about doing it. You end up deleting it. And then you set your filter to delete the emails from Tyler King because you feel bad about your workplace productivity, and then you forget about it.
Fair.
One thing I want to get to here, I'm actually really excited about. I don't know why. I think it's because I just did a little bit of research on like Chrome extensions and things like that. Is that what you were envisioning, or is it literally just you're in your email, you write an email, you get back, there's no fancy extension involved? It's just kind of like almost like an email reminder service that has some sort of translating skills into specific types of notes or something.
Yeah. I have a problem, which is I always make ideas bigger than they should be. So like, yes, I think it'd be really awesome to have a Chrome extension. And then like, I think you could almost iterate this to one day having a CRM. Like, please don't, because then you'll compete with me, and that makes me sad. But like, I think you could build this into a very robust tool. But if you were like, I'm going to a hackathon for a weekend, I think you could launch something that would be useful to people with just an email, no Chrome extension. The only interface would basically be you have to authenticate with their calendar somehow. Like, the tool is going to be syncing back and forth with their either Google or Outlook calendar, so it knows when they have events scheduled, and then it can just send them an email, 5 minutes before the event. I don't think you need more than that to start. But yes, there's Chrome extensions and all kinds of other stuff would be nice ways to spice it up. I think one of the big challenges is how do you monetize it? And probably these extra features would be a good way to consider doing that.
Yeah, so I did a little bit of research on the sort of note-taking industry, whatever that means on the sort of website that I found some research. It's up to hundreds of millions of dollars, projected to be up to $1 billion within the next 10 years or so. So yeah, that is kind of like the question you have. I can see how you have all these note-taking apps like Evernote is a great example. I remember watching the founder of Evernote pitching his Evernote app back in like the late 2000s in a little personal video and how cool this little new thing is. And then it became huge, and you've got, Todoist. You've got, what's the one we're using a lot lately as we take
There's
notes?
Like Notion is a big one.
Notion is becoming, I never heard about it. And now it's like, maybe it's just because Cortland is talking to me about it all the time. but yeah, it's so I think it seems where the revenue is though is in assisting people to organize the notes or do something cool to help facilitate what you can do with the notes versus like reminding them to take the notes. Because it seems like that's where we're at with this one, is that the simple value add here is, do you actually take the notes in the first place, right? Or are we going to try to have some interesting features and make it sort of the next wave of how you take notes?
I don't think it needs all those bells and whistles, extra features. I think that the key thing here is making notes useful. So there's the act of taking it in itself, but then there's also the act of translating it into what are the next steps? What are the things that need to happen as a result of this? We've all been in those situations where the meeting is running long and you got back-to-back bookings, and then you look at your schedule the next day and you don't remember what happened during that meeting or what needed to happen. And people, if there are multiple people on the meeting, someone can remember an action item that needed to happen that wasn't exactly what was talked about. And you have all this wasted effort that comes about from not capturing exactly what needs to be done next. So that's the way that I would position it, is if you do a good job, this app allows you to do a good job of making the most out of your meetings. You're already investing an hour, let's say, into a meeting, and that's leveraged by 5 to 10, 15 people's time. So it's a lot of time that is being pulled into this meeting, and you need to make the most out of it. And that last 5 minutes of deciding what you're going to do with as a result of the meeting, I think that's where you get a lot of value.
I like that idea a lot, and I agree there's a lot of value there. I do think maybe that's phase 2 value, though. Like, I think just people who aren't taking notes, taking them is arguably enough value add to have something here. And then there's additional workflow and stuff beyond that. But just for perspective here, again, I work with kind of like old school businesses. A lot of industries have to take notes for compliance reasons. So for example, if you're in financial services, like, you probably never look at the notes. There's probably no action items, but it's like, if I get audited or sued, I have to have notes, or else I could be legally in trouble here. There's other industries like that.
So
yeah,
it's
I mean,
funny,
just even
we've been in the pandemic so long that I did not even think about offline activities like that. And maybe you were referencing online ones. Are you talking about, is this a note-taking app strictly for online or offline, or both?
Probably both. One thing I haven't mentioned yet, but another really nice thing about email is it already works offline. So you need enough internet connectivity to receive the email so you can reply to it. But versus compared to the technical complexity of building like an app or something with offline access, you can just be composing your email, whether it's online or offline. You can be typing it on your phone. Not that, I don't know if anyone would actually do that, but I think it would work well for both potentially.
Okay. Yeah. So I was thinking about the online sphere and why notes would not be as valuable in itself. And it's because there are tools like Otter.ai that will automatically transcribe your Zoom meeting to a decent degree of accuracy, as accurate as you would probably need to remember what's going on. And that's 15 or 20 bucks a month for that functionality. It's hard to compete with that on top of what Otter is already doing.
I would argue that transcripts and notes are different things, but you're
Absolutely
right, for compliance reasons. That's true. One just like area of opportunity I can say is like things that we all take for granted, like they haven't made it to a lot of these industries. So maybe a different idea is just resell Otter to financial services companies because they don't know about it.
That's interesting. Yeah. I keep going back to and maybe I'm overcomplicating it, but making some sort of an email extension too that would help people organize their notes. You know, I mean, you mentioned people who have to take notes. You know, for example, in my condo that I live in, our board, right? They have to take notes, and it is for compliance reasons. Like if you don't take the notes, I don't know, it affects the status of the organization, or like various non-for-profits and part of a guild for piano technicians, which I know is an antiquated thing, but again, they use these like Robert Rules of Order, and you know, you have to call the meeting to order, and the president has to say this, and and they have to take notes. So I see where you're going. I think that's a very interesting insight that I think is the crux of this idea that we called to, towards the beginning of the episode of like, no, it's not just a note taking app for, your grocery list. And this is for people who literally have to take notes, and you're really facilitating not that they get done. And I would argue it seems like the value add coming in here is being able to know what they need to take even, and helping facilitate that they take the right type of notes, so, is it a minutes type of notes, where you can help them, gosh, I don't know. That would be interesting actually, if you could make a Chrome extension that as you typed in your email, it also kept track of a timestamp, or an approximate timestamp. And so
that'd be huge for time tracking, for billing. Yeah.
Right. And email often does refresh, I believe, on at least, a relatively often basis, maybe every minute or two. So it'd be interesting to be able to try to integrate that type of thing into writing things out in an email.
If we're dreaming about features here, one that I was thinking about is an Alexa-like feature or Google Home-like feature where you say, take an action. Tyler is going to call this customer by Friday, and it automatically captures that separately as an action in whatever app that you're doing. That's way down the line, but if you're dreaming about where this can go, that makes me salivate.
Yeah, I agree, and I want to dig into something you just said, which is like whatever app you're using. I think one of the key features of this, well, first of all, I think this probably has to be freemium. I think like the basic version of this, you got to give away for free, but you need extra kind of features to monetize it. And all these things we're talking about would be great paid features. But that other app you're using, almost every professional is not going to use this as their system of record. It's not like, okay, my note is in this, little micro SaaS, mission accomplished. That would be enough for some people for compliance and stuff, but they really want it in their CRM probably, or they want it in Notion or whatever their actual system of record is. And that feels to me like a premium feature to say, it's not just taking your notes, it's getting it where it needs to go. And then there's all kinds of automations. Yeah, like set a task in that same CRM or link it to the right contact record, because your calendar already has the other contacts at the meeting on it. So it could pretty easily go in and link it to the right stuff. And there's all kinds of value adds to connect to the data to where it actually needs to be.
Yeah, talking more about pricing. Yeah, I completely agree with the freemium idea. I think that another approach that people could pay for is number of meetings. Let's say that you were capped at 5 meetings per month or 10 meetings per month. 10 seems a little high, but let's say 5 meetings per month, enough to get you to build a habit of using it and to get you really see the appeal of using it. And, but not so much that power users are going to be able to just be on the freemium plan for free. It makes me think of Slack. I like to rag on Slack on the podcast. I have a ton of workspaces that I'm part of in Slack, and I've never paid for Slack. And that's a mistake in their pricing model that's the case.
Well, I want to push back on that.
I'm supposed to say this also. Chris loves to rag on Slack, but also loves to rag on me for not using Slack, which is just always confuses me. But
you're completely off of Slack. You don't use Slack at all.
Wow. I have that. Well, I have Slack and I don't use it.
You don't use it.
I the number of times that somebody is like, but I told you on Slack, and I'm like, Slack? What do you? Oh, okay, gosh, that doesn't count. It doesn't
Hit
count
me up on
as a
AIM.
communication channel. I do use it, but you can't count on me to know what happened on Slack.
Ethan is basically a caveman when it comes to technology, though. He does not.
I don't even have a phone right now. I do not have a mobile phone. I have not had one since April.
Wow.
I lost my phone, and I was like, yeah, I don't need a phone.
Fair enough. Notion is like, oh, there's this new app out there called Notion. It's like, yeah, you can go to google.com. Do you guys know you can search and find anything you want on there?
I'm still on Alta Vista. I don't know what you're talking about. But okay, so Chris, I want to push back on the Slack thing though, because I agree with you. There's probably money to be made because you're getting value out of Slack and they're not monetizing it. But if you look at freemium not as a pricing scheme, but as a marketing channel, maybe it's doing exactly what it wants. Like I bet these Slack channels you're in, you're talking about like maybe you two have one for this podcast, maybe you have one for some community or whatever. These are never going to be big money makers for Slack. They could get small amounts of money out of you, but what's amazing is you are spreading it with your friends until someone who's the CFO of some big company comes along and buys a 10,000 seat Slack account. And that's how they make money, right?
Yeah, I agree.
This is one of those no news is, or what is it? Bad news is good news, or no bad news, no news is bad news. Anyways, point is, we've been talking about Slack like all over the place for like weeks now. So they're getting all this publicity just by being bad for you.
Yeah, but they're not making money on any of it. So let me add to this a little bit. One alternative that they could do for pricing is you can only be logged into 5 channels at once. I'm logged into like 12 channels, right? And that's just on a user basis. Get rid of the you can have this completely separate from the organization. There are a ton of freelancers out there who are part of a bunch of channels, and it would be annoying enough for me to have to log in and out of different channels for me to pay $5 a month for that. I would happily pay that. They're way stupider app purchases that I have made that are just, hitting my credit card repeatedly. So I think that's a big missed opportunity. And I think that they're missing the pricing because after they've been bought by Salesforce, you're getting bombarded with all these 50% off a Slack upgrade, limited time upgrade. Every single channel that I'm in is hitting me with this message of, upgrade to premium for 50% off. So Salesforce is trying to figure out how to monetize it right now.
So let me bring in something that's interesting here that's applicable on multiple angles at this point. One, it kind of addresses this concept in general of an app that could be monetized but isn't being monetized. It also touches upon this aspect that we may incorporate where it's some type of a Chrome extension or Gmail extension. And it also tackles the idea of how are we going to acquire users off the bat. So this is an interesting strategy the listener might be interested in, brought up by Nathan Latka, who's kind of grown increasing popularity in the starting a business space over the past several years. He recommends or has promoted a way of starting a business, a software business that he thinks is relatively simple. You find a Chrome extension that has some good reviews, has a good number of good reviews, has a good number of users on it, but has not been updated in a year and is a free app. And you buy it and you put up a paywall immediately. And all of a sudden, after 2 weeks of using the app or 3 weeks or whatever it is, once somebody gets in the habit, you go, it's just going to be like $5 a month. So if you really want it to keep it, like you're going to have to pay a fee. And the thing is, apps like this are built by people who probably don't care about it anymore, right? Like they built it, they thought it was going to be something, then they got distracted, they did something else. And so what you can sometimes get an app like this for maybe a few $1,000 really. And then you can monetize it. You can double down on it and reinvest in the money that you made monetizing it. You can start promoting it. And on top of that, you get a user base. You've purchased a user base. So if there's, there can be up to 1 million people using some app that you could get for $10,000 or something like that. And now you can start marketing to those people. So if there's a note-taking app or there's some sort of existing Chrome extension that is in alignment with starting this type of a business, you can actually purchase a user base up front and then just start slowly marketing to them about that this is a product that they might be interested in.
I want to ask Tyler, let's say to build this idea, you obviously have development chops, so you're advantaged in doing so, but what would it cost you in time and money to get this idea off the ground?
I really don't think it would be much. You mentioned no code earlier, and I don't know enough to say if it could be. It seems possible it could be done with no code, in which case just do that. Great. But if we're eliminating that as a possibility, there are these services. So the one we use at Less Knowing CRM is called Mailgun, and it'll send email for you, which honestly is pretty simple. But more importantly, it'll make email addresses where someone can send an email to that address, and then they'll parse it, pull the files out, clean it up, and then send that to your server, almost like a form was being submitted. So technically it's pretty easy to handle incoming emails. This 11 years ago when Less Annoying CRM started, this was actually really hard, and now it's super easy. So I think you just need a server. It's a pretty low capacity server. Like there's not a lot of traffic going on here. It's just you get some emails coming in and you log them. That's one side of it. You need a database, but I mean, just anyone who's ever built a web app, this is just like boilerplate on every web app. There's nothing special going on here. The only slight complexity I see is integrations are hard, and you need to integrate with their calendar for this to work well, because you have to know when the events are happening so you can send them an email about it. I wouldn't say that's
like Chronify, which is I think Fantastical uses Chronify to connect to your calendar.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know about that. If there are easier ways to do it, we at Less Annoying CRM, we have like from scratch built Outlook and Google integrations, and it's a pain. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me to hear there's easier ways to do it than that.
Yeah, well, I guess if you're trying to do it without spending any money, then Chronify wouldn't be the best option. But they do have unlimited API calls for $99 a month.
Yeah, that sounds great. And the nice thing about this, even if you do it my way, the hard way, it's not like we sync full events back and forth, recurring event logic. We do edits and stuff like that. This is purely just pull down their calendar and send a reminder email when an event's about to happen. As far as integrations go, it's pretty straightforward, I think.
So I wanted to bring back this concept of niching into an industry where they really need to take notes. I did a little searching online, like, is there a note-taking app for the legal profession? And, I found some articles, and they basically just listed existing note-taking apps like, Evernote, or, basically whatever's out there. So that's actually quite fascinating because whenever if somebody's going to write a blog article like that, it probably means there's at least some market for people saying, I'm a lawyer, I want a note-taking app. But whenever you get people using something that's in existence that isn't quite right, but that's what they use, there's an opportunity there to niche down and offer them what they actually need. So if we were to make this, I'm curious if we think this is a good option to actually pick the niche of, say, lawyers, and then start marketing to them. And really this starts out, or maybe even stays, a legal note-taking app, which really caters to the needs of lawyers, for example. Is there another industry that would be a better place to focus? Maybe you have more experience, Tyler, in terms of, what kind of industries have certain needs and how easy it is to serve them.
Yeah, I think lawyers are one of the ones that would come to mind for me. I think financial, Less Annoying CRM serves all these different industries. So I know maybe more than the average person, but I wouldn't say I'm a deep expert on any of them. But financial service has some level of compliance. I don't think lawyers necessarily have compliance so much as just they bill based on meetings and stuff like that. I could be wrong about that. Financial services, you mentioned board meetings. That's a big one there. There's a lot of corporate governance stuff where you are required contractually to take notes. But yeah, I think legal would be a good place to start. My concern with niching down is I think throw out what I said about freemium. Like freemium kind of requires a mass audience. And I think part of kind of like what we were talking about with Slack, part of the idea is a lot of people who maybe aren't your target customer would use this and spread the word about it so that you could find those lawyers and those financial service people. If you were going to niche down, I think just charge for it up front and do more of a direct SaaS play, in my opinion.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and like you said, maybe even more than lawyers, something like financial services. And honestly, I like the idea of corporate governance, and that's just because I have personal experience in this, just even with my limited, founding a company and things like. There's a lot of small business owners out there who, for this stuff, it's like, oh shoot, I was supposed to write something up, and then all of a sudden, you can get some notice from the government that says like your business doesn't exist anymore or something, or you owe some sort of fine because you didn't fill out this thing. And to be honest, it's easy to sell the value then if you could even, without them even knowing what their calendar is and saying it's this time of year again, you have to have your annual board meeting, and here's a template to fill out the notes, and that'll be $50 because if you don't do this, it's like a $500 fine, or your business becomes defunct or something like that, right? That doesn't sound like a bad play.
I really like that from when you think about marketing, content marketing is my favorite kind, even though I've never really made it work very well. But what you're looking for is like teachable moments so that you can write content that educates people. And what you just said, like so many people don't even know that, which creates this great marketing channel of like, I'm going to write content to educate people on what are the compliance things in your industry. Oh, by the way, instead of stressing out about it, pay me $5 a month and your problems will go away.
I think
That's interesting.
It's a critical decision point here to whether you're focused on the compliance angle or the productivity angle. I think back to a conversation with Aileen Lerner, and she said that if she were choosing again, she would not choose a market that is a cost center. And I think the compliance model is more of a cost center. It's something that you just have to do, and you're gonna pay for it. And if you look at it from a productivity angle, it could be argued to be the profit center, right? Your team overall, if you could have a case study that said your team is going to be 15% more productive, something like that would be cheap to pay $5 a month per team member for that.
Let me throw it's sort of a third category, but sort of a subset of productivity, which is being in the CRM space. Something I deal with a lot. There are a few products that are systems of record for businesses. So CRM's one. That's normally like sales, customer service. That's their system of record. ERP is going to be that for the supply side, and then maybe project management like Jira or something like that for probably tech, but also maybe marketing and stuff like that. These tools, having correct data in there is hugely valuable to the executives at businesses. The director of sales needs notes in the CRM, and more than just notes, needs what's the expected close probability, what's the deal size, things like that. If you could view this sort of as a productivity tool, but also as like a data like accuracy tool, which is I like your point about cost center versus profit center. Having more accurate data is a profit center, I think. So that's another angle to take here potentially.
Interesting. Okay, so I've predetermined the title of this episode. It's going to be "Can You Make Millions on Meeting Notes?" And so it's got alliteration. It's great. It's appealing. It's got a number in it. We may actually change the title. But
that works.
Can we make millions on meeting notes? That's really so. The market size is of the hundreds of millions on just the note industry in general. We're talking about niching down to industries where there's probably quite a lot of money flowing, like corporate governance or legal systems like that. So there's definitely going to be money flowing. It seems like our play is either going to be really broad for popularity's sake and a kind of a small fee, or really narrow. I'm leaning towards going towards a narrow niche. And so I'm thinking like creating a product that could range on the level of somewhere between $5 to $50 a month, depending, right? Like, where's a situation where $50 a month makes sense? Let's put it that way. Is it in like the corporate governance? Is it $50 a year? Is that just what it is? Any thoughts about what kind of business would pay what price for this?
This is just pure guesswork, but I think Chris's intuition is right here that I think you can charge. I actually think as far as, you can be a vitamin or a painkiller. As far as being a painkiller goes on the cost center side, like if you can scare people about compliance and then say we fixed the problem, I think there's a business there. I don't think you're charging $50 a month there, because they could be like, well, for $50 a month, I'll just like pay the assistant to make sure we do this, or there's all kinds of other solutions. But I think for $5 a month, you probably can. I think if you're charging $50, you've got to be able to say we're making you $100 a month, and you can't really give that argument with compliance, I don't think.
So that if it was $5 a month, that's around $60 a year per client, and these are maybe like corporations. I mean, there's plenty of corporations. I mean, I guess look at a company like Stripe, right? Of course, they're making a percentage off of the profits that people bring in through the app, but there's plenty of people who are starting businesses, starting corporations, having to deal with corporate governance. So there's quite an audience there. Are we looking at maybe getting a 10,000 people, 100,000 people on a platform like this?
I would expand the audience beyond the corporate folks. I'd say freelancers would be likely to use this. I would happily use something like that, something that made my meeting notes better. I mean, you could say that could increase client retention, make it easier to create monthly reports, things like that. Some people would be happy to pay 5, 15, $25 a month for something like that.
Yeah. So if you can get, if you can get 50,000 users paying $5 a month for this business, then it could be a $3,000 revenue business. I guess that seems achievable, and it seems like you'd have to. It seems like at first it would take a while to get to that number if you just focused on like lawyers or something like that. Maybe you have a few niches. Maybe you even treat it like a system where you market to these specific niches, but they don't know that you also market to the other niches. You market to the lawyers.
Here. Ethan, you said 50,000. You said 50,000 users at $5 a month.
That would give you 3 million a year.
Okay, you said 3,000.
What did I say? 3,000 a year?
3,000.
Yeah, 3 million.
Yeah. I was trying to make can you make millions on meeting notes work?
Yeah.
Sorry, I think 3,000. You can clearly make $3,000. Definitely, you can definitely pass that bar for sure. That you're gonna make it to 3 million as well.
I think you could like daydream this as a multi-million-dollar a year business, but I actually think one of the beautiful things about it is a lot of new entrepreneurs who haven't done it yet are better off starting with something a little bit smaller because there's kind of less competition. It's easier to sell something like that. Like the more if you want to charge $50 a month, great, but you have to have something really, really good. So the numbers you're throwing out sound a lot, by the way, like Less Annoying CRM. We have 24,000 users paying us about $10 a month, which comes out to 3 million a year. It took 11 years to get here. I'm sure many companies do it faster than we did, but like it can be done and it's a really, really long slog. I think the beauty of this is you could launch something in a week and get a little bit of revenue. And then from there, you could either say, okay, I'm going to start offering all this more sophisticated stuff. Or you could say, great, I've got my first SaaS under my belt. It's maybe paying enough to quit my day job. If you're familiar with Rob Walling's stair-step approach, this seems like maybe like a very, very unambitious first phase of building software to me. What do you think about that?
I think you're spot on.
Going back to Nathan Latka, who I brought up earlier, I think it was an excerpt from his book that I found posted somewhere online, but he was making a list of where all his revenue comes from. And that very app that he started, according to his own theory, was a sending later app, Chrome extension, right? So you go into your Gmail and it's just a thing where you can schedule that it'll send later. Some company they had that, but they weren't monetizing, bought it. And basically he grew that to make $6,000 a month, from no revenue at all, basically. And, but he shows how does he make his money. And he's got the 6,000 incoming from that app. And he's got some other project where he has 6,000. And yes, he does have now like 50,000 a month in revenue coming in from podcast advertising and something else. And he's got a real estate investment, but yes, that could get overwhelming if you don't know how to manage it all, but there's also the cry to diversify, and so if you do have multiple things under your belt, you use it as a practice for later. I think that's an interesting strategy. You have a lot of optionality here. You could expand it. You could have it be a small thing. You could sell it.
I think that's a good place to wrap here. We could talk about this all day. To the listener, let us know what you think about this episode. What do we get right? What do we get completely wrong? What are some different action steps that you would take? If you attempt this, tell us, email us at update@runwithit.fm. You might have a chance to get in front of Tyler and maybe even partner on this idea. You get someone who's been super successful with Less Annoying CRM. Tyler, where can listeners go to learn more about you?
So I'm on Twitter at Tyler M. King. The podcast you mentioned earlier, Startup to Last, and we are podcast network fellows. We're both in the Indie Hackers Network. And then, lessannoyingcrm.com is kind of my main gig. So that's what I've been working on for the last 11 years.
Great.
And
Tyler
And
King.
here's this moment where we say goodbye to the listener as we've spent this time inside your head for the past 30 to 40 minutes. It's been nice spending time with you. You did miss a spot on the dishes. So just check that plate over there and, get a little bit more soap on it. But other than that, it's been great spending time with you.
And it's been great spending time with you, Tyler. Great to meet
Yeah,
you.
thanks for having me. This is great.
Thank you very much.
All right. That was fun.
Well, I hit stop recording on Zencaster, and we are
Take us
not on the
offline.
premium plan there so we're just doing the MP3 version.